the table saw. Now this is a primary shop tool that basically all wood shops are going to have one of these. And to help us talk about the table saw, I have a special guest with us today, Coach Sheldrake. Come on over. So, table saw, again, basically all wood shops are going to have one of these. And this is used to basically make dimensional cuts on your lumber. So if you have a wide board, it's made to cut narrow strips. And what makes this so efficient and such a great tool is that they get perfectly straight cuts because the board will ride along the fence and you can get long, perfectly straight cuts every time. There's a lot of different features. You can add sleds and different things to do all kinds of different cuts, but in class, in the shop, what you're going to be doing is when you need to make something narrower, basically you're going to be using this as your guide. And so you can rip down plywood, any kind of boards basically, but again, just make that a narrower cut. The table saw is one of the most versatile tools in the shop, but it's also probably the most dangerous. The most accidents where people lose fingers are because of a table saw. And so this one's special, it won't cut off your fingers. But before we talk about that, why do you think a table saw is so dangerous?
Because the saw blade is exposed and you are taking the material for the blade.
You're exactly right. So you remove the guard, even if it's there, your finger can slide underneath the guard. And what makes this tool different than the others, just as you said, if you have a circular saw or a miter saw, you are taking the tool into your material. Your material stays still and you're moving the tool. So you're in control. The difference with this is you have the material moving. The tool itself is staying in the same spot and you are then moving the material towards that spinning blade. So your body motion is going towards the blade, which makes it so dangerous. And so when people are pushing the material in, it's real easy just to slide your hand over the saw, or say you tripped and fell, you fall towards, because again, you're going towards the blade. And so that's why this one's so dangerous. You gotta do things right, learn good habits now, so that you'll stay safe. And so this saw is special. Well, this is called a saw stop. This one has a special mechanism that won't cut off your finger, which is awesome. If you touch the blade, what happens is that your body has an electrical current, and the saw will sense that. And what happens, there's a little gunpowder cartridge and an aluminum block, basically a brick of aluminum. And it shoots that brick of aluminum into your blade instantaneously, milliseconds. As soon as it gets that electrical charge, it fires. And so the blade will actually drop and disappear into the side of the saw before it even breaks the skin of your finger. So it's an awesome safety feature, but just because it's safe doesn't mean you want to learn bad habits. Because most people on a job site, they aren't going to have one of these. And so on a job site, if you go and touch a blade, that finger's gone. And so we want to learn good habits now, so that while we're safe, so that when you go on a job site, you'll also continue to stay safe. So to turn this saw on, there's a couple different ways, because again, it has that safety mechanism. So first you have to just hit the on switch, which has the yellow no. You got to wait for it to stop blinking red. And what this is doing is it's ramping up the computer. That safety mechanism is checking all your connections to make sure everything's ready to go. Once it stops blinking, that means it's ready to actually turn on. And that's this big lever here. So you just pull this lever forward, and it starts it up, and it's really easy to shut it off. It's a big thing like that. You can slap with your hand, hit it with your knee, and make it nice and large so it's easy to turn it off. In case, again, if something happens, you can slap it really easy. So as you're working, always make sure you turn it off and you walk away. And it's safe to leave it in this on position because that's just turning the computer on. When you're done, at the end of the day, you want to shut it off, but as you're working with it, go ahead and leave it on. Some other things, we have the camera set up here. Go ahead and crank this wheel and watch what happens with the blade. So if it cranks it to the right, it goes up, and then cranking to the left, it takes it back down. And so you want to set the blade so it's about a 1/4 inch above your material. Go ahead and crank it up a little bit. I like just basically the tooth of the blade, just leave that tooth sticking out and you're good. You want it a little bit high, just to make sure you're cutting all the way through the material, and it just helps it pass more smoothly. But why do you think you only want to set it about a 1/4 inch high?
Less damage, you make mistakes.
Exactly. And so if you only have about a 1/4 inch materials, or a 1/4 inch of the blade sticking up, if you happen to touch that with your finger, you're just going to cut off a 1/4 inch of your finger instead of the whole entire, till your whole entire fingertip. And so that's why you just leave it, because accidents happen, so you just want to make sure you're causing the least amount of damage possible. And so that's just general safety practice. So let's go ahead and make a cut. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Alright, so I'll just say, we'll just say 4.5, random, it doesn't really matter. So we're gonna cut a board like this. So the saw has this guard, and for the most part, we're leaving this on. Sometimes you have to take it off for a specific cut, but if you can leave it on, leave it on. And so it's a nice reference. If you don't touch this, any of the plastic, you know your fingers aren't touching the blade. And so when you make a cut, how you want to stand, you never want to stand directly behind a piece of wood. So you don't want to stand here when you're pushing. And when you do that, it's because the two dangers of a table saw, yes, the blade, but the other big danger, and where actually probably more injuries happen, is called a kickback. And kickback is when the board pinches on the blade. How does any gun or any projectile, any slingshot, how does it work? Where the force of motion is, where the
Opposite of force of motion.
right, it's going to shoot it that way. And so if you're pushing the board into the blade is spinning towards you, and so if it climbs up on that, those RPMs are going to launch the board straight back. And so if you're standing directly behind it, those are going straight into you. And for guys, it's not the most comfortable spot to be hit, right?
Right.
So you want to stand off to the side. And so again, I'm standing here, so safe practice, if this happens to kick back, it's going to hit the door behind me and not my body. The only time you want to move over is as you finish the cut and push the board through. So, you already got your specs on, I'm going to put mine. I'm going to show you how to do this. So if you saw what I did, as I pushed the board through, again, I'm standing off to the side, but I kept my thumb behind the material. If you put your hand on the top, there are some dangers there, because the board can slide out from underneath your fingers, and then also, your hand can slide on the material and slide towards the blade. So always try to have an edge, and if you're at the back of the piece, hook your thumb, makes it nice and safe. And as you saw, I used my hand to push it all the way through. If your hand fits between the fence and the blade, it's safe. Otherwise, you want to be using one of these push sticks. But for these wider cuts, it's safe. Again, I feel more control with my hand, and so if you can fit your hand in here, it's good. Once you get narrower cuts, always make sure you're using the push stick. And things to look for when you're pushing it through, always make sure you push the material all the way through. The side to the left of the blade, the off cut, that piece isn't going to go anywhere. You don't have to worry about that binding, so you can take care of that piece later. But the piece between the blade and the fence, you have to make sure you push it all the way through until it's past the blade. If you stop mid-cut, that's when the kickback happens. So if you were just to let that go, it's going to shoot backwards again because it's stuck between the fence and the blade. So remember, between fence and blade, always push it all the way through. And if you're on the receiving end helping someone pull the board, make sure you pull that one through, not the one to the outside of the blade. All right, you think you're ready to make a cut?
Yes.
All right, you get set up with this piece. I was going to turn on the dust collection. So when you're feeding your board through the table saw, you want to maintain constant pressure against the fence. Again, this is to maintain and get a perfectly straight cut and to avoid the other type of feedback. Because imagine if this board is moving along your blade, right? And so you start pushing it, you're not keeping it tight to the fence, and the board wanders this direction. Now what's going to happen to your board? It's going to get on top of the blade, and it's going to start spinning this way. And so imagine a piece like a helicopter comes flying at you. And so you always want to make sure you keep the pressure. I think of it as aiming towards our classroom door. You want to maintain pressure at a diagonal angle. It's not just straight to the fence and not just straight forward. You're always pushing it towards that door. Have you ever played pool before, or billiards?
Yes.
All right. When you have a pool stick, can you pretend this is your pool stick? How would you slide that through if you're striking a ball right here on the table?
Like this.
Yeah, and see how you're using this hand as a guide? The
Yes.
same thing, common practice on a table saw. To get a straight cut, you need to hold the board tight to the fence. And so I like to think of it as playing pool. I usually use my index finger. You can use your thumb. But whatever it is, this hand's planted on the table. it's not going anywhere, and you can use that as a guide to keep it pinched tight to the fence, and you just let the board slide. But this hand's not going anywhere, and you can rest it, and it's locked in. You don't have to worry about hitting the blade, and you can use your other hand to push through. And so this is a narrower piece, and so we're going to use a push stick. So as you're pushing it through, once your hand gets here, you can use this hand to hold the board in place, pick up your push stick, and then finish your cut. You never want to let go of the board with two hands, because again, why?
Because it can kick back.
Kick back, right? So if you let go of the wood, it's going to be shooting backwards. So you always got to maintain pressure pushing forward. And so again, with thumbs hooking on the edges, if I'm pushing it with my fingers, I can slide it forward. Then when it gets to my thumb, I can hold it there, pick up my push stick, and then finish the cut. So always try to lock something on the back of the board to prevent kickback. And so just like a pull stick, slide it through, hook your thumb, pick up the push stick, and finish the cut, and go all the way through the cut, all the way past the blade. Think you can try that?
I can.
All right. Out of this piece of plywood. It's a little different because you can't hook your thumb on the back of it. Like those little pieces, you always can hold on to the back. The problem is this is too long. So if you're holding on the back, the board's already past the blade. And so using our technique, pretending it's a pull stick, right? You kind of that same motion as if you're playing pool. You're going to slide it through, and you keep your hand. You just grab it as far back as you can. It might stick out past wherever you can bounce the weight. So this hand is holding it to the table. And then you're just going to slide it through. And then if you have to reposition your hand, hold it with this hand, make sure you're pushing real good, reach back, and then push, continue to push. And you want to try to do those in smooth motions, because if you rock it a little bit, you will get some burn marks on your wood piece. And so you want to just, as you get better, just try to keep those smooth motions. Always keep it moving, and just keep your hands in a nice steady motion. So I'm going to do one, and then I'll let you go. Okay? So you saw it happen when you were about this far into your cut, it wasn't quite coming out. And so part of this left hand, not only are you trying to keep pressure on your fence, you also make sure you're keeping pressure down. And that's why your index finger stays on the top, because that's keeping the pressure down. This blade's a little dull, and the duller the blade, it's going to want to push it up faster, so you gotta make sure you keep down pressure. And you also can, on these longer pieces, there's a lot of control with your back hand, because it's easy, the weight of the board itself wants to pull itself down. So you gotta make sure you're compensating that. Almost because I almost pick it up and then use my thumb and index finger to push it down. And then I know I'm making flat contact. You always want to make sure the board is staying perfectly flat. To adjust the measurement, so this is between the fence and your blade. To adjust that measurement, what you want to do is there's this red lever, you pull it up, that'll loosen the fence so it slides back and forth. And this saw has this guide right here, there's a bubble with the red line. This tape measure is pretty accurate. You're within a 32nd of an inch. So let's say I wanted to cut a board at 5 1/4. Can you slide me to 5 1/4? So you line it up to your 5 1/4 line. Just little final taps, and then when you get it, you just push the red lever down, and now you're locked in. So sometimes when cutting a board, you're making a rip, you need to put a bevel on it, or you need to put a miter, which means you're cutting the board at an angle. And so how to adjust that on the saw is over to the left side, there's a crank here. So if you spin that to the right, as he's spinning, you notice the blade is now leaning further to the right. So go ahead, keep cranking it. And so as he cranks, on the front here, there's a dial. This dial right here is showing you what degree it is. And so say you wanted to cut at 22 1/2. you'd move it to right about a little bit right there. Usually you're going to go between 0 and 45. So 45 is all the way on the far side. So that most times either you're cutting one or the other. So go ahead and crank her back to 0. You see, you crank it the other direction and it takes it back to 0. Let's review. So when we're cutting the board, which side do we want to push all the way through?
The right side,
Right?
closest to the fence.
The side closest to the fence. If your fence happens to be on the other side, that is possible. Again, it's just the side between the blade and the fence because you want to avoid kickback. So when we're cutting and we're pushing the board through, which direction do we want to push?
Towards the door.
Towards the front door. You want to apply a diagonal pressure to always keep it moving forward, and also keep it tight against the fence. Because again, we don't want our board to start this way, because it'll helicopter at you and start spinning and flying back at you. So what are the two dangers of a table saw?
Cutting your finger off or some other extremity and kickback.
Yes, so cutting your finger off and kick back. Cutting your fingers off shouldn't happen as long as you're being smart. The more likely cause of injury would be kickback. So always make sure, again, you push that all the way through to maintain constant pressure and never let go with both hands. Always make sure one hand is maintaining pressure so the board doesn't slide back on. Do you have any other questions?
No.
All right, so if you follow these little tips and guides that we gave you, you can use this table saw safely and again, learn good habits, safe habits. So if you ever get to a job site where you don't have this safe setup, doesn't have these extra safety features, you're still going to be safe. Because again, most people, they can afford one of these. I personally, in my house, I don't have one of these. So on a job site, get good habits now so that in the future, you're going to be safe. Thanks for watching and tune in next time for our next episode of Tool Time!